Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's discussion sponsored by Capture Higher Ed, titled Banish the Buzzwords, Practical and Powerful Digital Strategies for Higher Ed. Today's presenters are a team of Capture specialists and are subject matter experts in their field of expertise. We're combining a lot of great talent today, so I'm going to keep introductions short. Today's panel is a team of subject matter experts, as I said, and first is Jack Klett. Jack leads Capture's efforts in graduate and online programs. Most recently, Jack assisted Jefferson and Philadelphia universities through a merger, and then joined Capture as our Director of Graduate and Online Initiatives. Next is Jamie Gleason. He's a Senior Enrollment Advisor here at Capture, who also has a background on both sides of the desk. Jamie has served as directors both of admissions and alumni relations. His expertise is in undergraduate enrollment. Kevin Bauman leads Capture's expansion into university advancement. Kevin's last on-campus CETA position was the Director of Development at Texas State. Kevin has used his experience to grow and serve our advancement partners. And finally, Laura Hagan is a Senior Communications Specialist at Capture. Laura also serves as a subject matter expert in our digital advertising within our operations team. Laura is part of our partner success teams working across all partnerships. Thank you to all of today's presenters. What we hope to accomplish today is discussing ways to reimagine legacy outreach methods, utilizing traditional and new forms of digital advertising to increase visitors to your most powerful recruitment and solicitation channel, which we believe is your website. Furthermore, we discuss how behavioral intelligence fuels digital advertising through personally identifying and influencing those conversions to enrollments and gifts. There are a lot of different types of digital advertising, as you can see on your screen, and we're going to step through each type listed. But first, Jamie is going to explain the different display options for digital ads so that you understand where ads appear.
Thanks, Amanda.
Jamie?
Yep, the different types, as you saw on the previous screens, there's about 6 or 7 different types that we're going to try to run through today. And the context is important. So understanding where they appear is pretty critical. So we're going to do a little 101 on social versus web versus digital content. And here are just a few examples from some of our partner institutions. Social ads, as you can see on the far left there, are those that appear in the news feed or other areas on social channels, Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Those are obviously off your website, and that goes the same for web banners, which you can see the example of in the middle. These are the ads that we're so used to seeing when we go shopping on Amazon or Nordstrom's, and then we are on a different site, and these pop up, and they remind us of the product that we left in our inbox in our cart. Dynamic content that you see there on the far right is Capture's marketing automation tool that we're going to talk at the very end about. But you can see that they also have these 3 different tools have very different benchmarks for the metrics for calculating performance, and those are all indicated there on the bottom, which we'll get a little bit more into that. But it's just important to understand that they're going to show up in different places, and they're going to be used for different purposes. Jack's going to talk through us on the next slide here about the journey that we are on.
That's right, Jamie. Thanks. As Jamie mentioned, I would like to walk us through the student decision journey or student life cycle as it relates to the traditional marketing funnel. So it all begins with awareness and the types of activities we are employing to build and cultivate that awareness among our known and unknown prospects. So that takes us to the next stage, the consideration stage. And this is where we begin to see the hand raising among our prospects as they formally inquire. Now, preference is communicated to us in the form of the applications that we receive for our institutions, for our programs. So our inquiries advance to the next stage by now becoming applicants, by showing that preference. As you know, as we approach May 1st, there are millions of students in the decision stage, and those decisions will come to us in the form of tuition deposits in undergrad and in graduate, either a tuition deposit or an intent to enroll form or actual course registration. And then finally, that takes us to retention. So retaining our current students to the point of degree conferral and even beyond as they advance their level of study. Jamie, I'm going to give it back to you.
Sure. Yeah, and as we know as professionals that each of these different stages of the funnel is going to require different tools to move the student forward. So what we're going to talk about is just the different types of channels that are useful when it comes to the different different stages of the student life cycle. You can see the big outcome that we're hoping for in the identification process here is brand awareness and brand affinity. It's not just getting your name out there, but also creating a love, an interest, and a genuine piqued interest in the product that you're offering, whether that's an alumni experience or a student experience under an enrollment. We use search engine management, search engine optimization, also retargeting, paid social prospecting, Geo IP targeting, and dynamic content for all of these brand awareness and affinity initiatives. And the main target, as Amanda referred to earlier, is really pushing students back into your web environment, which is your biggest storefront for the process of creating that affinity. Back to you, Jack.
Great. As I mentioned earlier, the consideration stage is where we have our hand-raising inquiries enter our enrollment funnel. And this is where we have an opportunity to engage them with clear calls to action, leading to an opt-in moment. So engaging prospects across social media channels is particularly relevant here because we'd like to accrue those likes and shares of our content, specialized digital display campaigns using web or social retargeting, email targeting, delivering those advertisements to an entire household on all display devices within that household through household IP targeting, delivering those targeted ads to specific geographic locations using Geo IP targeting. These are all powerful ways to encourage prospects to make their interest known. And it's the interaction with these ads that ultimately will bring those prospects to your specific .edu. And once there, having relevant dynamic content that displays throughout the website, throughout that student's journey on your .edu, that's going to provide additional hand-raising opportunities. Kevin, you want to talk a little bit about advancement and DDT in the next stage?
Sure, that's great. And I think one of the great things to point out here is that we may be using some different words, but at the end of the day, we are all encouraging students and alumni to take specific actions through these same set of tools. So really exciting to see the way that this applies in the awareness and consideration. For anybody tuning in on the advancement side, which you might think about in the donor cycle, the identification and qualification process. But as soon as we've built up that brand awareness, whether it be with a student or alum, we're going to get them into the cultivation and the preference stage. And it's at this stage where we're going to use a series of communications to drive a specific outcome over a period of time. So in enrollment, maybe that would be beating an application deadline, making sure you have your application in on time. In advancement, a great example would be an upcoming Day of Giving campaign and making sure that we're creating the awareness, but also driving alumni to the website to make sure that they're saving the date for our upcoming Day of Giving. So the value in the cultivation and preference stage, you'll notice a number of different channels that we're using, whether it be through retargeting, email targeting, household IP, and then once on the site through dynamic content. So you'll recognize some of those from Jamie and Jack's comments. But the value in this stage is really sustained, consistent calls to action leading up to a specific point in time. So Jamie, why don't you take us through solicitation and decision?
Jamie, you might be on mute.
You are correct. I was on mute. I was having a great conversation here in my office. I love that. We knew it was going to come. 10 minutes in, it's time for a comic moment. So everyone take a smile and let's keep going. Halfway through the decision journey, it's probably appropriate to take a step of pause and understand, like we all do, that as we go through this cycle, we understand not only more about the individual that we're trying to take to the next step, but we also understand that there's different communication modalities that are going to get to that call to action. So at this point, on the enrollment side of things, we're really looking for driving toward that decision that, how do we make our May 1 National Decision Day goal? How do we get that student to deposit or register for the upcoming, accepted student day or whatnot. The difference here is that we know a lot about the student. We know what their preferences are. We know the call to action is going to be can be very pointed, and we can use specific channels in order to get to that. Retargeting toward identified students that we understand that they need to register for the accepted student day, using email target to talk about those outcomes, focused messages that reinforce those decisions, and then really getting into the household with household IP and with dynamic content. And to the dynamic content, which we'll talk a lot about more later on, is that we can really drive this towards stage-driven communication. So if this student is maybe an applied but not yet complete, or an accepted but not yet deposited, we can cater those messages precisely to where they are in order to make the biggest impact, whether it's through the summer or in later on in the summer as we get toward melt prevention and things like that we can keep them from going away through the summer. Jack, you get to close us out here.
Great. Well, I think that my colleagues would agree that this stage, the stewardship and retention stage, this is about far more than retaining a student to degree completion. This is about retaining the connection, the relationship that exists between the student and the institution, creating a lifelong learning partnership that takes the student from undergrad to postgrad to graduate and to donor. To do this, we leverage digital strategies that keep the institution top of mind. And that is why you see us deploying web and social retargeting, email targeting, household IP targeting, and as we do with many of our campaigns, aligning the digital content, the digital dynamic content on the universities.edu that is specifically designed with the goal of stewardship and retention, which is retaining and cultivating the lifelong journey from student to donor and back again. So in many ways, this is more than a student decision journey. This is the cycle of a partnership that needs to be continually invested in. And here to take us through some of the different strategies, Laura, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I feel like I need like a trumpeting announcement or horn or so I'm going to go through each different type that we offer and tell you all a little bit more in depth about them and kind of what sets each of them apart. We're going to start with search engine marketing, SEM. What is SEM? So search engine marketing is leveraging search engine results across Google, Yahoo, Bing, all the search engines, and basically you're paying to display among the top results. So it allows advertising display across the Google ad network, and it's basically hitting everyone that uses a search engine browser, which is everyone, that kind of aligns with the attributes of your institution. So whether that be academic programs, funding initiatives, this is going to ensure that you kind of show up at the top of the list for everybody, that top of page one, that coveted spot that everybody's looking for. On the next slide, you'll kind of see an example, which Jack, I believe, is going to talk about.
Yeah, so just right there on the left, this is an ad that was displayed to me on CNN.com based on my Google ad profile. So clearly I'm looking for a good neighbor. All right, great. Everyone's on mute, but they would be cracking up at that terrible joke. To the right are schools that appear when I search for, in this particular case, it was degree in outdoor education. So you see there that this particular institution that offers that programs in that area comes up at the very top. Look, there are 1.3 billion people engaging with a search engine every single day. Every single day, 1.3 billion. 80% of them do not continue past the first page of search results. So our prospective students are part of that 1.3 billion. So optimizing search engine marketing is a key strategy for promoting brand and program awareness.
And it's really not doing anything more than just paying a little bit to nudge up to the front in line. So it's not, that link doesn't change anything. It just has the little add button next to it that says somebody paid for this to be up here. So next, we're going to talk about retargeting. So there's two different kinds of retargeting. There's web and social. But in general, retargeting is used to kind of trigger ads based on visits to your website. Banner ads can kind of display on any device on the web, and social ads display on any device on Facebook and Instagram, and soon to come with us, LinkedIn. So when a user visits your site and then leaves to go to another site, ads are then served to those users when they're on their social media accounts, or when they're on, if they're banners, if they're on like ESPN, CNN, basically anywhere that there is a space on a website that people can pay to advertise, you'll pop up on there. These users that are going to receive this, they already know who you are, but may not know everything they need to make their decision. So you can run retargeting off of any page on your website that has a tracking pixel. And that doesn't really do too much that you can see. You just kind of put the code in the HTML in the header or footer of your website, and then that lets that talk to our vendors and talk to the companies that are helping us run the ads, and that shows student H went to your website and left and went to ESPN, and your ad popped up because you had put retargeting on that page of your website and had them served it based on that. So for target audiences, as far as retargeting goes, all website visitors can be targeted with retargeting, but you can get as detailed as you want to be. So if you wanted to get all the kids that were on a fine arts page, you would retarget off the fine arts page, and then every kid that goes to that, you'll know that they're interested, and you can serve them a specific fine arts ad. So and like I said, the audience is already familiar with the school, so the messaging doesn't need to be as descriptive, like here's who we are. It's more like schedule your audition or schedule your visit or that kind of thing. They're always going to kind of be action oriented to bring the visitor back to the website to do something. Use cases I kind of just discussed, kind of targeting all visitors to the arts page, serve art program specific banners or social media, financial aid pages, and then have them have something show up for them on another website with your school's logo and your FAFSA code, or your FAFSA school code saying to get your FAFSA turned in. Because of the flexibility, it kind of works through all phases of the student and donor decision journey. So these, you can kind of be as free as you want to be with them. They're not as much specific as some of the other ones might be. On the next page is an example that Kevin can talk more about, and Jamie, a couple of their partners that have done some of these.
Sure. So what does this look like in real life? So let's walk through some real life examples. And again, going back to using the same technology and applying it across multiple areas within the institution. Before I turn it over to Jamie to talk about what it looks like on the enrollment side, on the left-hand side of the screen there, you'll see an actual retargeting campaign that was deployed leading up to a partner's day of giving. What's really exciting about this technology is we know that traditional solicitation channels are under a bit of pressure right now. And we know that phone calls may come at inconvenient times, or that mailers might get lost in the pile, but every single day alumni are choosing to visit the website. And so it's really important that we take advantage of that. And so when an alum visited this individual partner's page anywhere on their website, and then went back to whether it be ESPN.com or anywhere across the internet, they were served a message to remind them that April 6th is the upcoming day of giving. So we could stay front of mind simply based on the fact that this alum visited the website. Where that becomes really exciting is we know that alumni are 4 to 7 times more likely to give simply by showing up online. So staying front of mind with alumni who are most likely to give is all made possible through this retargeting campaign. Jamie, do you want to talk about what that looks like in the enrollment space?
Sure. Yeah, and like Laura had stated, there are lots of different use cases for this, and the ability to, like Kevin said, be right there in front of them is absolutely critical. So in this case that you can see on the right-hand side, this is a social retargeting ad where a web user had gone to the MBA page, and then when they're off the MBA page and they get that retargeting pixel, linking up with their computer and the different ad services, then they are the recipients of this messaging to kind of push them to the next step. It can be very specific. It can be very catered to what's next, relative to where we want them to go in the process, whether it's to go back to the website to make a donation or to take the next step toward enrollment, if that's scheduling a visit or doing the actual application. These are very critical. Some of the best campaigns that we see the traction from in capture land are retargeting, because we know that audience needs to come back to the website, and this is the way to bring them back. Next, I think up, Laura's gonna give us a little bit of info about email targeting.
Ooh, get excited. The next thing we're talking about, like you said, is email targeting, and this is a little bit more kind of in-depth and more targeted than general retargeting. So as we kind of go down, we're going to kind of work into more and more specifics and different things you can do with these. Email targeting, we use that based on the email addresses already in your CRM. You can send us a list of email addresses that you want to target for whatever campaign you're wanting to run. If you're wanting to get admitted students to go to an orientation event, send us a list of email addresses for those students, and we can target specifically those, because what it does is it triggers ads to appear on devices associated with a person's email address. So their phone, their laptop, their tablet, and anything. These are going to show up if their email address is connected to it. So it can display on any device on the web, and social ads can, as with retargeting, can display on any device on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. The target audiences for email targeting, as I said, is prospects whose email addresses that you already have. So what you would want to do, we would create a campaign that targets just those people, allowing your institution to send more specific messaging to them. So it can also be used for purchase list, any point in the decision journey, just kind of depending on what you want that CTA to be. So you can do, as I said, like admits that you're wanting to go to an orientation event, or alumni that you're wanting to give by a certain time. I know we've done campaigns before, like trying to push to give by the end of the fiscal year, that kind of thing. So anything like that, you're going to want to try and find a more specific email list so you can ensure that those people are receiving those messages. On the next slide, you'll kind of see a couple of email targeting examples, and Jamie and Jack can speak to this as far as kind of what those were used for and the differences in the two.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Laura. I think the important thing to remember here is that even though we all live in the world of advancement and or enrollment, or both, the student journey, sometimes there's value wherever you have an email address to do some advertising. So the example that you see here on the left was like a celebration of 150 years that we did. It was a very particular campaign toward a very particular set of recipients. We pushed this out to them in order to basically raise awareness and then re-invite their engagement with the institution. This happens to be a partner school that we do a lot of grad and undergrad work with as well. But this was actually more of an initiative just from the general advancement office, just to kind of bring some alumni back, help them to, remember and celebrate this very, it was a very pointed moment in the school's history. So it doesn't just have to be the call to action of apply now. There can be some broader calls to action that can be used when it comes to email marketing as well. Sorry, email targeting, not email marketing. I said the wrong word there.
Whole other webinar.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point, Jamie, because you're right. This type of digital work can be done even beyond advancement and enrollment, and really kind of focus in on kind of the overarching marketing needs for an institution. This specific example to the right for Colorado State University Pueblo, CSUP, this was for enrollment. This was specifically to target folks to register for Discover Days at CSUP. So this ad, the reason it looks a little bit different is because this was an ad that was served on social media. So this ad used email targeting to be able to target and match to specific social media accounts. So we were able to deliver this ad across Facebook and Instagram platforms. So this then, of course, if you were to follow the call to action, would take you to a page with a short form fill that would allow you to go ahead and register. And this particular ad, especially because of the imagery, performed quite nicely for CSUP.
Yes, it did. And real quick before we go into the next thing, and we'll touch on this in a few more slides from now, but the way these social ads, the email targeting and retargeting are the way that they're served as far as to who. So that's gonna say retargeting is going to be anybody that visits your site and leaves it. Email targeting is going to be your CRM. But social means it's going to still be on Facebook. So that ad is going to show up in your newsfeed. It's going to show up in your right-hand column, anything like that that you would see now with anything that says sponsored or any companies that are doing that kind of thing. It's the same exact thing. It's just going to go in those places depending on who you are and how you're being served, whether it's email targeting or retargeting. Next is household IP, which is a little bit different, but a little bit similar at the same time. It's similar to email targeting, but instead of email addresses, it uses home addresses and appends the IP. So that's going to be to anyone in the household across the web, whereas email targeting might be more specific to the parent if they're the one getting these emails, or the student. The household IP is going to ensure anybody in that physical address connected to that IP address is going to get that messaging. Target audiences for household IP is similar to email targeting, in if you have their home address already, then you send that along with the CRM, and we use that to display the specific messages. This is a little bit different because it like I said before, it's going to be a little more likely to go to parents and others in the household besides the student. Or in other cases, alumni or student-parent combinations. So it's a good alternative if you have a list of addresses, if you may not have everybody's email, and that's going to be a little bit more successful than email addresses can change, as we know, anytime. So as long as you have the student or the donor's home address, that's going to perform a lot better. And a good case of that one will be is this next slide, which Kevin will talk a little bit about for Central College.
Thanks, Laura. And I'm going to go a little bit down the advancement path here, a little bit further down the advancement path than we have for more of this presentation, because this is such a powerful tool for institutions that are looking to move the needle with participation rate on campus. If you're looking at your alumni base and you're saying, we don't have email addresses for 10, 20, 30, 40% of our alumni base, we now have a tool where we can start to digitally communicate with alumni before we have their email address. So if we have a home address and if we have a name, we can start to deliver digital communications. And the value there is these are sustained communications driving alumni towards a specific action. So in this case, you'll see on your screen, your gift brings joy to Central College students. This was actually a calendar year-end solicitation that was pushed out at the end of this last calendar year that was delivered to alumni whether we had their email address or not. And so we can now start to digitally communicate with alumni where we don't have their email address, and no longer do we need to start sending out 15-page high-gloss magazines that are costing us $7 a piece to send through the mail. We can start creating that magazine digitally and sending out sustained communications, driving alumni to the digital version of that at a fraction of the cost. So household IP is really going to be a powerful tool for alumni offices and advancement offices that are looking to move the needle with alumni pledge rates on campus. So with that, Laura, I will turn it back over to you.
Awesome, thank you. Now we're into paid social prospecting, which is only social media, and it's potentially a little confusing because, as we said before, our email targeting and retargeting products can be displayed on social media. This is strictly through Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You're going to go through their business manager, their ad manager, and do everything in those. So what PSP is, which is the easier way to say it, is used to do is to find new prospects based on demographics and behavior. So say you like certain posts or certain pages or follow certain pages on Instagram, Facebook, this is going to use that information and show you ads based on those actions and those demographics. So say that you have somewhere listed that you like, since we're in Kentucky, you have bourbon listed. So you're going to have anybody that is looking to target those people is going to choose that demographic from the drop down, and it's going to guarantee that you're served this because it's a similar audience to those bourbon lovers. So the target audience, like I said, it's just social media users who are likely not already part of your prospective student or potential donor pool. These are going to be kind of just casting out the net and seeing others you may not have gotten their information from yet, or may not be familiar yet, but would still be interested because they've listed similar interests or job titles if they're maybe looking for a graduate degree. That's a good way to kind of find them. And then there's a couple of different use cases as far as audience. We can do a custom audience, which is based on specific interests and demographic information instead of behavior or known info. So like I said, if you want to put, it's a music education program, you want to put music education, teaching, demographics. You can also do by age, you can do by gender. If it's an all-female school, you can do by distance. You can say everybody within 30 miles of Louisville that likes music, we're going to show them this specific ad. And then you can do a lookalike audience. So that is created kind of based on data you have from students that you know with similar qualities and or demographics. So what that's going to mean is something like, if you have a group of students that you admitted last year and you want to kind of target that same kind of group, you can put them in, and Facebook's algorithm will find others based on that list and kind of find similar lookalikes to them and serve the ads to them based on that. So these are a little bit more informational than the email targeting and retargeting, because likely most of this audience doesn't know much about your institution yet. So as I kind of said, building an audience is a little more involved because of the people that are unknown, but it's definitely a good way to use it, and a good spend for what you're getting, because that is, as we've kind of learned, social is where the students are these days, and this is going to guarantee that it's served to them. And also important to note, when you're contracting paid social prospecting, most of the time there's a direct charge from the vendor for the campaign, and you pay Facebook directly for ads. Usually with retargeting and email targeting, you're going to go through a third-party vendor that's going to do some of that work on your behalf. On the next page, you can see an example, and since Jack is quite familiar, he can talk a little bit about the Jefferson PSP campaign that we did here.
Yeah, thanks. This is one, Laura, that's near and dear to my heart, because this was a campaign that Capture actually put together for me when I was at Thomas Jefferson University in enrollment management there. So this was a fun campaign for Jefferson as an institution. The Dadvale Regatta in Philadelphia is the largest collegiate crew rowing competition in the world. And it was great that Jefferson was named the key sponsor. So for the next 7 years, it will be known as the Jefferson Dadvale Regatta. So we wanted to do something that would allow us to be able to leverage all of the promotion that the Dadvale Regatta was doing for the annual competition, because they were promoting the Dadvale Regatta across the country. So we used paid social prospecting. We were able to go ahead and do some custom audience targeting based on interests in crew and rowing and collegiate crew, et cetera. And also we were able to do some lookalikes. So basically what we wanted to do was to serve these ads to anyone with the crew interest, because we wanted to make sure that some influencers like parents and family members were going to be included in this campaign. But we also wanted to target those students that were nearing college entrance age. So we made sure to use kind of a combination. This ad was then served, and then the learn more option there took you to a really nice landing page that Capture had also designed for the event. I can tell you, as the person who commissioned this campaign, this was very well received and performed quite nicely for the institution.
Awesome. All right, we're getting towards the home stretch. One of the last things we'll talk about, I have one more after this, but this is the second to last, is the Geo IP targeting, which is going to kind of go along in the same vein as household IP email targeting, but it's a little bit different. So what that is digital polygons are mapped around specific locations to get the specific associated IP addresses. After those are mapped, display ads are served to anyone using that network on any device. So a good example of this could be looking for transfer students. If you're looking for transfer students for your institution, you may want to target community colleges in a certain area. And the way this works is you send us a list of the schools or the addresses. I believe we've done a similar one for nursing students, and we kind of drew the polygons around a couple of the area hospitals, anything like that. And that's going to show to anybody within that area, which we can make it as big as 100 miles to as little as half a mile. Anybody with IP addresses in those areas are going to be served the content. These are usually going to be students that are not part of your prospective student or potential donor pool, but you know that that's maybe an area you pull from. Maybe if it's transfers you're looking for, you know you've gotten a lot from a certain community college, so you're going to want to use this and kind of draw around that within a few miles and ensure everybody kind of coming and going from that school for classes and stuff is going to receive these ads. And this is just more location specific, a little bit different than the household IP, but you can get a lot more people depending on how much space you draw around each of these and how many areas you choose. So that's kind of more up to you. The next page is an example kind of with Drew that did that. If Jack, you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, happy to. This was a really fun campaign. I really like working with Drew University because they like to kind of push the envelope in terms of calls to action and just an overarching kind of fun sense as you're looking at their content. This was specifically using Geo IP targeting, as Laura mentioned in her piece of this here. We were kind of drawing a line around a circle around community colleges for this particular campaign. We led with a message here of affordability, talking about the transfer scholarships that were available. And again, you see Drew's willingness to kind of play a little bit with calls to action. Rather than discover or learn more or take the next step, they led with a call to action of launch your life. This campaign performed well above industry average in terms of click-through rate. So we're happy to see those results. Laura, I'll turn it back to you for dynamic content.
All right, and we're gonna finish with arguably the best part, because this is Capture's specialty. This is our dynamic content on your website. So what we've done is create over a dozen behavior-based ways to communicate with your website visitors in real time. We do several different types of dynamic content. We do toasters, which are the items that are going to pop up from the corners of your page with a little message and a photo on there. Popovers, which are going to gray out the rest of your screen and kind of show up so that they have to kind of click on it or close it to move forward. We can also do video popovers. We can do image swaps and inserts. We can replace an image on your page if students have met certain behaviors, that they'll see that instead of what's normally there and can switch out. We have an academic scholarship calculator where students can go in and put in their SAT, ACT information, GPA, and kind of get an idea of the financial aid they're going to receive. We have progressive ID forms that kind of let us identify a little bit more and know who's on your site and who's doing what, so that you can send other targeted materials to them or be in touch with them. We also have triggered emails, triggered postcards, triggered text messages, email alerts to staff. If we have some students on our site that are in, say, someone's specific territory, a counselor's territory, and in a certain status, we can have that a list sent to that staff person every time those people are on the website. So that's pretty cool. It's all behavior-based. It appears on your website and on the prospect screen based off their browsing behavior. So that could mean you have a student that's gone to 3 financial aid pages on the website, and we don't know necessarily anything more about them than that. On the 4th time they go to a financial aid page, we can send them a toaster that kind of says interested in learning more about financial aid, or here's our scholarship information, that kind of thing. So that's definitely a unique way to get in touch and get those people moving along any further. Target audience, as I said, is anybody on your website. We can target anonymous visitors. That's going to be more behavior-based as far as pages they click on, things they have filled out, that kind of thing. Identified visitors is going to be based on individual profile. So as far as information that based on the information you send us, if we know that the student is in your 2019 pool and they're in an admitted status, then we can show things to them based on that. Maybe pushing to submit their deposit, take the next step, that kind of thing. Something cool about this is Google Analytics can help you give a good look at your macro website traffic, but anonymous visitors build a personal profile where messages can be targeted to them to take the right next step based on their browsing history. Identified visitors are those, like I said, who have interacted with the campaigns or filled out a form letting us know their actual identity. As I said, once they're identified, we can kind of further individualize their donor decision journey, student decision journey with targeted messages. So even as much as knowing how much someone gives, we can have pop-ups served to them or information served to them based on their amount of giving, saying you've donated every year, can you donate again this year, that kind of thing. So it's pretty cool. And as I said as well, the triggered content or direct outreach from an admissions counselor or a gift officer. So we can do it based on kind of the person at your institution, and anything, kind of the sky's the limit there. I think that does it for me. So back to Jamie with traffic and weather.
Sure. I think that, this is a kind of a critical moment to stop and think about the synthesis of all these campaigns. With the increased use of technology in both enrollment and advancement, I think there's this growing middle group of individuals who like to stay unknown. And I think the types of campaigns that Laura has especially given a lot of detail to, they do two things, right? They help us discover and they help us to take the next step. And I think that what we do with dynamic content or actually with all the previous tools that have been described, is that we're driving students back to your website in order to then use marketing automation to kind of take it to the next level. So here's a few examples of just the types of dynamic content that Capture uses. And you can see the one on the left there is called a popover of a static image that was used for the University of Toledo. And then on the one on the right is a toaster where it pops up on the right-hand screen, kind of like a chat box when you're looking for a new car or something like that, where it pops up and says, hey, do you need any help? And there's always a picture that shows up usually with that. What these are very good at doing is highlighting where that student is in the funnel, where that potential donor is in the pipeline, and pushing them, maybe nudging them is a good word, to really consider what the next step is. So in many cases, on the enrollment side, especially as we're thinking about this year, it's like, how do we get rising seniors to plan their campus visit now, to come to the spring open house, to do things like this? And these are perfect tools to take advantage of where they are in the funnel. And if you don't know them, to build their identity. As Laura said, we can take anonymous students, anonymous users, and start building profile information using progressive identification forms. And we're actually experimenting with a whole bunch of these progressive applications and progressive survey tools that we're deploying to students and users, so that we can better understand, hey, what are they coming here to the website to look for? And that's all for us, part of just uncovering where they are and nudging them to where they need to go. And I think Kevin has a little bit more of what's to follow after you nudge that person or that user or make them identified. What our partners expect on a daily basis.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Jamie. So I hope everyone's feeling really empowered. What we've talked about today is the ability to engage prospective students and alumni in so many different ways and so many different scenarios. We can now reach students and alumni if we have an email address for them, if we don't have an email address for them, if they are active on our social media site, if they're not active on our social media site. And then when students or alumni are on our individual websites, we can now communicate with them in real time using the dynamic content that Jamie outlined. So with so many different ways to communicate with students and alumni, how do we keep it all straight? How do we know which strategy to use and when? It's important to note that all of the different digital campaigns that we talked about today are focused on in our dashboard and reporting through Capture Behavioral Engagement. And Capture Behavioral Engagement is live on our partners' websites. monitoring the behaviors of prospective students and alumni, and helping to develop behavioral intelligence. And it's this behavioral intelligence that's really going to drive the strategies that really make the needle move when it comes to digital communications. So Jack, do you want to round us out and talk to us a little bit about behavioral intelligence?
Happy to do it. This is really Capture's behavioral intelligence at its core. So Capture believes that digital marketing is a super effective tool in increasing your website visitors. And once they are on your website, you should continue to interact with them and to influence the visitor to their right next step. So when they leave your website, digital marketing, such as the products that we shared today, specifically products that deal with retargeting, will work to bring them back to your site, keeping them engaged. So that's kind of a full circle loop, right? We're closing that loop from your website, off your site, and then back again. The key thing I think about behavior intelligence is the ability to identify who your visitors are, right? Google Analytics is great. It'll show you all the hits and the number of folks in terms of the traffic to your site, but truly identifying who your visitors are, figuring them out by name, and then using their unique behavior on your site to deliver the right message at the right time and truly influencing them to enroll at your institution or to make that gift. That is the power of behavioral intelligence, which from a comprehensive perspective includes digital display on other sites, it includes dynamic content on your site, and the ability to close that loop. And with that, I think we have some questions. So Amanda, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Sure. One question that we've had come in is about the dashboard that we progressed past a little bit fast. Someone asked me what was that showing, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the reporting dashboard here that we use CBE as our tracking platform for. You can see this is a profile of a prospective student, and it shows each of the interactions that she has had on the website, as well as, and I know you can't see this very small in the visit details, but it also shows when she is interacting with digital ads. So we're able to have full funnel attribution to show that when that person comes to your website off of clicking an ad, you can see when they continue to make actions on your website, when they are retargeted back to your website, et cetera, to show the performance of the ads both off your website and on your website, all on one individual profile. And every day, a visitor's report goes out to staff members, whether it be on the advancement side or the enrollment side, so that they can see who is on their website. And it's full with engagement scores and affinity indexes. Those are our proprietary scoring systems that Capture uses to be able to rank a person's affinity towards your institution. So that's just a really high-level overview of what our behavioral engagement dashboard has to offer. And with that, I'm going to move to a couple other questions. We had another question come in about rates of ads. We gave you a lot of different types of ads. Would anyone like to answer for me where you see the best performing ads in our portfolio?
I'll take that one. As I mentioned a little bit before, social is by and large the best way to get to students these days. And donors, as the Facebook audience is getting a little bit older, you're going to have a lot more potential donors or parents of these students on Facebook. The students are often on Instagram, so you just kind of meeting them where they are is usually going to be more successful. There's arguments for each of them, and everything. A lot more goes into them as far as why you should serve them and where and how. But as far as bang for your buck and the most people seeing them, I think social is going to outweigh it every time. And whether that is paid social prospecting or social email targeting or social web retargeting, just because that's where the students and the parents and the donors are.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add a little bit to that. I think some of it has to do also with, how much do you know, and what is it that you're trying to achieve? So it's a hard question to fully respond to without knowing a little bit more of the backdrop. But I think that Laura is correct in that we get lots of hits on social, but there are some other other points of information that might be necessary. I think the best thing to do is if you have questions about what campaign types might be good for the best for what you're trying to achieve, either reaching out to any of us who are here on the webinar or to Jim, who knows all sorts of insight about how to put these together as well.
Sure. As Jamie was noting, if you have any questions today, we would be really happy to just get one of our market directors on the phone with you to look at what you're currently doing with your digital advertising and talk to you about our approach with behavioral intelligence, both off your website and on your website, to give you an assessment of what we think you should do next. And that's a complimentary service that we'll do to talk with you guys. So Jim's information is in the middle of the screen. He's happy for you to reach out to him. Another question, I wanted to piggyback right on to Laura's response as well as the best performing digital ads. The best performing digital ads, like she said, are with social, but what we find, if you remember from the very beginning of the presentation, the dynamic content actually has a click-through rate that's up in the 15% on average. And so I think that's another powerful thing to understand, is that as people are coming to your website, as Jamie said, they're increasingly getting more interested in you, so that when they're engaging with your brand, when they're coming to your website, they have a higher likelihood of clicking on the messages that you're sending to them. That's why we added that in as the additional type of digital that we wanted to teach you about today, so that you understand that those click rates are actually exponentially higher than like ones that you would send out into the wild, perhaps with a household IP targeting campaign. But they all serve different purposes. Thank you for joining us here today. And I want to do a special thank you to all of our panelists today, Jack Klett, Jamie Gleason, Kevin Bauman, Laura Hagan. Thank you very much for coming and sharing your subject matter expertise in the markets that you represent, as well as our digital advertising platform. So thank you very much, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.